Lieutenant Sarah Chen clutched her duffel bag as the transport shuttle's landing gear connected with the gleaming platform. The massive docking bay of the Galactic Defense Academy stretched before her, bustling with activity as beings from across the known universe went about their business. Some walked on tentacles, others hovered using anti-gravity tech, and several moved on appendages Chen couldn't even name. The air felt different here, processed through environmental filters, calibrated for 17 different species' biological needs. It carried unfamiliar scents, the metallic tang of Varaxian pheromones, the sweet nectar that Florian cadets exuded when excited, and the sterile undertone of constant disinfection. Lieutenant Chen, welcome to the GDA. A tall, willowy being with 4 arms and iridescent skin approached. I am Administrative Officer Shrell. Director Nixella asked me to escort you to your quarters before the orientation briefing. Chen nodded, keeping her expression neutral despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. As the first human instructor ever assigned to the prestigious academy, she represented not just herself, but her entire species. Earth had only joined the Galactic Alliance 30 years ago, a mere eye blink in the cosmic political timeline. Thank you, Officer Shrell. Lead the way. As they walked through the vast corridors, Chen felt the weight of curious stares from passing cadets and staff. The magnificent crystal spires of the Academy visible through every viewport stretched toward the binary stars overhead, housing what was widely considered the most elite military training facility in known space. Her quarters proved surprisingly comfortable, with environmental controls already adjusted to human preferences. She had just enough time to change into her formal uniform before Shrell returned to escort her to the briefing room. Director Nixella, a graceful 6-limbed being with reflective skin that shifted colors with her emotions, greeted Chen personally. Lieutenant, your assignment here represents an important step in bringing human military doctrine into our unified approach. The High Command believes your species has unique perspectives to offer. The way she emphasized unique made it clear this was diplomatic phrasing. Chen understood the subtext. Humans were considered primitive by many member species, their military history brutal and unsophisticated compared to civilizations with millennia of interstellar experience. The next morning, Chen faced her first class, 24 cadets from 11 different species. The towering reptilian Zaxhar students dwarfed the diminutive crystalline Valerians. The luminescent Medusan cadets pulsed with subtle light patterns that conveyed their emotions to those who could interpret them. I am Lieutenant Chen of Earth, she began, activating the holographic display with her course outline. I'll be instructing advanced tactical resilience. A ripple of what could only be described as amusement passed through the class as they reviewed the syllabus. Physical drills, equipment maintenance without computational assistance, combat simulations with artificially imposed technological limitations. Cadet Trilvor, an azure-skinned telepath with 6 finger-like appendages on each hand, raised a lime. His neural implants glinted at his temples. Instructor Chen, he said, his translator device giving his words a slightly mechanical tone, we've studied human military history as part of our xenology requirements. Isn't this drilling methodology just a relic from when your species used primitive projectile weapons and had no neural sync battle systems? The class erupted in poorly concealed laughter as several cadets' translator devices struggled to convey the nuances of multiple species' amusement simultaneously. Chen calmly set down her datapad and surveyed the room. Her expression remained impassive, but her voice carried throughout the space without technological amplification, a skill developed through years of command positions. When your neural system crashes, When your targeting computers go dark, when your quantum communicators fall silent, that's when you'll understand exactly why humans drill. Her words hung in the air. No one believed her. Not yet. But they would. Dawn broke over the Academy's eastern quadrant, painting the crystalline spires in shades of amber and gold. The artificial atmosphere captured the light, diffusing it into a soft glow that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Lieutenant Chen stood motionless at the edge of the training field, chronometer in hand. The perfectly maintained grounds had been transformed overnight into a grueling obstacle course. Mud pits steamed in the morning light. Razor wire glinted menacingly. Climbing walls loomed at irregular intervals. "Begin," she said quietly into her communicator. Her squad of alien cadets emerged from the preparation area. Chen had specifically requested a diverse group. She needed to prove her methods worked across species. The cadets approached the course with varying degrees of confidence. Several activated their neural enhancements, their eyes glowing with augmented reality overlays mapping optimal paths. "All personal technology deactivated," Chen announced. "This exercise is performed without assistance." Protests erupted immediately. "Impossible," declared Kravax, the massive Zaxhar cadet whose scaled skin glistened with protective secretions. "My species requires metabolic regulation in non-native atmospheres." "Medical exemptions remain active," Chen clarified. "Performance enhancers do not." Reluctantly, neural interfaces dimmed. Biometric monitors powered down. Enhancement implants entered standby mode. "Begin again," Chen ordered. What followed was nothing short of disaster. Cadets who had moved with fluid precision now stumbled through mud pits. The Valerians, whose crystalline forms typically interfaced directly with technology, seemed completely disoriented without their digital extensions. Trilvor, who had been the most vocal critic during the first-class session, fell repeatedly during the wall climb. His natural telepathic abilities, still functioning, projected frustration so intense that nearby empathic species winced. Again, Chen commanded when the first cadet finally crossed the finish line. Groans echoed across the field, translated into multiple languages by the Academy's ambient systems. They repeated the course 7 times. By the final run, every cadet was exhausted, filthy, and seething with resentment. Chen gathered them in a half-circle, their diverse anatomies lumped in universal expressions of fatigue. "Your first lesson," she said, "is dependency. Each of you relies on technology that can be neutralized, corrupted, or destroyed. Without your enhancements, many of you lost basic coordination." "This is pointless," Trilvor argued, his azure skin darkened with exertion. "No adversary could neutralize all Galactic Alliance technology simultaneously. Our systems have redundancies." Chen activated her datapad, displaying historical footage from Earth's military archives. "Humans fought other humans for millennia. We developed electromagnetic pulse weapons centuries before we achieved spaceflight. We created viruses that could corrupt any connected system. We learned, through blood and sacrifice, that technology always fails when you need it most." Kravax shook his massive head, sending droplets of mud flying. "Your species' paranoia is legendary, instructor. The Galactic Alliance has faced no such systemic failures in 300 cycles." "Peace breeds complacency," Chen replied. "Shower and reconvene in the equipment bay in 30 minutes. Later, in the sterile white environment of the Academy's weapons storage facility, Chen distributed standard-issue particle rifles to each cadet. "Disassemble and reassemble your weapon," she instructed. Before they could begin, she activated a control panel. The lights extinguished, plunging the room into absolute darkness. "Begin now," her voice came from the blackness. "This is absurd," came Trilvor's voice. "Many species here lack human visual limitations." "Which is why," Chen replied calmly, "the Zaxhar cadets will wear thermal dampening lenses. The Medusans will deactivate their bioluminescence. The Valerians will operate without crystalline resonance." From a hidden observation deck, Director Nixala watched with another senior instructor. Her skin had shifted to a concerned indigo. "These methods seem unnecessarily harsh," the director noted. The senior instructor, a veteran of 3 border conflicts, remained silent for a long moment. "Perhaps," he finally responded, "but I've begun to wonder if harshness might be precisely what our cadets lack." 3 months into the training cycle, Lieutenant Chen's squad had progressed from open hostility to grudging compliance. The daily drills continued relentlessly. Physical conditioning at dawn, weapons proficiency without targeting assistance, communication protocols using primitive hand signals, and endless tactical simulations with artificially imposed limitations. The cadets' performance had improved marginally. The Zaxhar no longer fumbled their weapons in darkness. The Medusans had developed non-technological communication methods using controlled bioluminescence patterns. The Valerians could maintain formation without crystalline resonance networking. Still, Chen sensed their underlying skepticism. They performed the drills but remained unconvinced of their value. These sophisticated beings, born into civilizations where neural interfaces were as common as clothing, viewed human tactics as quaint historical curiosities. Interesting perhaps, but ultimately irrelevant. Scenario 7. Chen announced as the squad assembled in the tactical simulation chamber. Orbital platform defense against multiple hostiles with communications blackout. The cadets moved into position with practiced efficiency. Trilvar, whose natural telepathic abilities made him the logical choice for squad coordinator, positioned himself centrally. Kravax and 2 other physically imposing cadets formed the frontline defense, while the more agile species prepared for flanking maneuvers. Begin simulation in 3-2. The chamber's lighting suddenly shifted from standard white to pulsing red. The Academy's alert system activated with a piercing multi-tonal alarm designed to be recognizable to all member species regardless of auditory capabilities. Director Nexala's voice echoed through the facility, her usually melodic tones sharp with urgency. "This is not a drill. Unidentified vessels approaching Academy space. All cadets to emergency stations. All instructors to command center. Security protocols Alpha 9 in effect." The simulation walls dematerialized, returning the chamber to its neutral state. Chen's squad exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from confusion to excitement. Several cadets immediately activated their neural interfaces, connecting to the Academy's defense grid and information network. "Finally," murmured one of the Medusan cadets, skin pulsing with anticipation patterns, "a chance to apply our actual combat protocols instead of these primitive exercises." Chen observed her students snap into their standard emergency procedures. The unspoken relief on their faces was clear. Here was an opportunity to demonstrate their sophisticated technologies rather than rely on Chen's endless drilling. "Maintain squad integrity," Chen ordered as they moved toward the designated emergency station. "Stay alert and remember your training." The corridors filled with orderly movement as cadets and instructors responded to the alert. The Academy's central command hub, a massive spherical chamber with 3-dimensional tactical displays, buzzed with coordinated activity when Chen arrived with her squad. Director Nixola stood at the center, her skin shifting through patterns of concern and focus. 5 unidentified vessels approaching from Sector 12, she announced. No match to any configuration in Alliance databases. The main display showed the approaching craft, sleek, asymmetrical vessels with unusual energy signatures. They maintained perfect formation, advancing steadily toward the Academy's position on the moon orbiting Centauri Prime. No response to identification requests, reported the communications officer. No recognition of standard diplomatic frequencies. Defensive screens activated, announced another technician. Academy shield grid at maximum capacity. Chen studied the tactical display, noting the unusual approach vector. They're positioning for atmospheric insertion, she observed. Those aren't capital ships, they're transports. The sensor chief, a multi-limbed Diraxian with specialized perceptual organs, confirmed Chen's assessment. Internal mass distribution consistent with troop deployment vessels. They're deploying smaller objects, approximately 200 units launching now. The objects appeared on the tactical display, small, spherical devices descending toward the Academy. Analysis, demanded Director Nixola. Unknown technology, the sensor chief replied. No explosive signatures detected. Minimal energy readings until. The first device activated just outside the Academy's atmospheric shield. A pulse of energy, visible as a rippling bluish wave, washed over the tactical display. Then the display flickered and died. Neural interfaces disconnected with painful feedback, causing several cadets to cry out. Communication systems fell silent. Even the emergency lighting faltered, leaving the command center in eerie half-darkness. In the sudden quiet, Chen spoke calmly. And this, cadets, is why humans drill. Chaos erupted throughout the command center. Cadets frantically attempted to reactivate neural interfaces that responded with nothing but painful feedback. Senior officers shouted contradictory orders as primary and backup systems failed simultaneously. Even emergency protocols relied on technology that no longer functioned. Lieutenant Chen remained motionless for 3 precise seconds, assessing the situation. Then she moved with decisive purpose. "My squad, form up," she commanded, her voice cutting through the growing disorder. Defensive formation delta. Her cadets hesitated, disoriented by the sudden technological void they found themselves in. Most had never experienced complete neural disconnection since early childhood. Now, Chen's tone left no room for questions. The squad assembled around her, muscle memory from endless drills finally overriding their confusion. Chen noted Director Nixola watching with an unreadable expression, her color-shifting skin muted in the dim emergency lighting. "What we're experiencing," Chen explained calmly, "is an electromagnetic disruption field, likely coupled with targeted system corruption. Your neural enhancements and integrated weapons will remain compromised until the source is neutralized." "How can you know this?" demanded Kravax, the massive Zaxar cadet, his normally imposing presence diminished by uncertainty. "Because humans have fought this way before, against each other, before we reached the stars," Chen replied. "We prepared for scenarios like this when other species prepared only for technological advancement." She turned to Trilvor. "Your natural telepathy, short range without amplification, correct?" The azure-skinned cadet nodded. "Perhaps 20 meters, limited to emotional impressions rather than clear thoughts." "That's more than we had during Earth's shadow wars," Chen noted. "You're our communications network now." She addressed the entire squad. The invaders will expect chaos and disorganization. They designed this attack specifically to neutralize advanced technology. But we've been training for exactly this scenario for 3 months. For the first time since their training began, Chen saw genuine attention in their eyes. The mockery was gone, replaced by the universal expression of soldiers recognizing their survival depended on the next orders. "We need functional weapons and a defensive perimeter," Chen continued. Section 42B of the Academy Charter requires all training facilities to maintain non-electronic backup systems. She led them through maintenance corridors to a sealed armory section that most cadets didn't know existed. The door featured an actual physical lock, a technology so ancient that several cadets couldn't immediately comprehend its function. Chen removed a small metal key from her uniform pocket. "Mechanical systems," she explained as she turned the key, "don't care about electromagnetic fields." The armory contained weapons that appeared primitive by Galactic Alliance standards: projectile rifles with optical scopes, chemical-propelled grenades, physical blade weapons, and body armor without integrated systems. "Backup contingencies," Chen explained, distributing the equipment. "No electronic components, no neural interfaces, no quantum entanglement. Just physics and chemistry." Trilvor examined his rifle with obvious unfamiliarity. "I've never operated a weapon without targeting assistance." "That's why we drilled," Chen replied simply. An explosion rocked the academy, sending vibrations through the floor. Chen checked her mechanical chronometer. "They've breached the outer perimeter. We have approximately 12 minutes before they reach the central sections." She surveyed her squad as they awkwardly adjusted to their equipment. Not ideal, but 3 months of drilling had prepared them far better than any other cadets in the academy. "Each of you was selected for this training group because you represented different species with different capabilities," Chen said. "Now those natural abilities are your greatest assets. Kravax, your scales provide natural armor. Valerians, your crystalline forms can refract light for signaling. Medusans, your bioluminescence works as a communication system." For the first time, the cadets began to understand the method behind what they had considered madness. Chen had been preparing them not just to function without technology, but to leverage their natural biological advantages that no disruption field could neutralize. "Director," Chen addressed Nixala, who had followed them to the armory, "we need to establish a defensive position and gather as many cadets as possible. My squad can serve as unit leaders." The director's skin shifted briefly to a pattern Chen recognized as acknowledgement. "It seems, Lieutenant, that the Galactic Alliance has much to learn from human paranoia after all. The invaders breached the Academy's outer defenses with methodical precision. Security footage from the few functional cameras showed disturbing images of the attackers. Biomechanical entities with insectoid features and weapon systems integrated directly into their exoskeletons. They moved with unnatural coordination, communicating through some means unaffected by the disruption field. Lieutenant Chen positioned her squad at Junction 7, a critical intersection connecting the residential sectors to the Academy's core facilities. The location offered multiple retreat paths and clear firing lanes, tactical advantages she had catalogued during her first week at the Academy. "Remember your drills," Chen instructed as they set up their defensive position. "Short, controlled bursts. Conserve ammunition. Communicate with hand signals, only unless Trilvor establishes telepathic contact." The alien cadets exchanged nervous glances, but efficiently arranged themselves in the formations they had practiced countless times. Kravax and the other physically resilient species created a front barricade using overturned storage containers. The Valerians positioned themselves as spotters, their crystalline forms allowing them limited light manipulation even without technology. From a side corridor, a group of senior cadets appeared, led by an instructor Chen recognized from the command center. They carried malfunctioning energy weapons and moved with obvious disorientation. Lieutenant Chen, the instructor, called, "The attackers have secured the northwestern quadrant. We attempted to establish a defensive line, but..." He gestured helplessly at their useless equipment. "Join our position," Chen offered. "We have functional weapons." The senior cadets approached with barely concealed disdain despite the situation. One of them, a towering avian being with iridescent feathers, examined Chen's projectile rifle with obvious distaste. "Primitive ballistics. You expect us to defeat advanced hostiles with museum artifacts." Before Chen could respond, the distinct sounds of the invaders echoed down the corridor, a rhythmic clicking interspersed with mechanical whirs. Her squad immediately shifted to combat readiness, their movements fluid and coordinated after months of drilling. "Take position or leave," Chen told the newcomers flatly. "They'll be here in 20 seconds." The first wave of invaders rounded the corner, 6 identical biomechanical entities moving in perfect synchronization. They paused momentarily upon encountering the barricade, clearly scanning for threats. Their carapaces gleamed dully in the emergency lighting, built-in weapon ports swiveling to target potential threats. The invaders expected disorganized resistance from technologically dependent defenders suddenly rendered helpless. Instead, they met disciplined, coordinated fire from weapons they couldn't disable. "Fire," Chen commanded. Her squad executed their drills flawlessly. Trilvor's first shots went wide, but he adjusted quickly, finding his rhythm. Kravax provided steady covering fire, while others reloaded, a sequence practiced until it became instinct rather than thought. The projectile weapons tore through the invaders' armor, designed to deflect energy weapons rather than physical ammunition. 2 attackers fell immediately. A third staggered backward, green fluid leaking from multiple impact points. The remaining invaders returned fire, energy pulses sizzling against the barricade. They attempted to coordinate an encircling maneuver, but found themselves outmatched by defenders who maintained discipline without technological assistance. "Flanking team, engage," Chen ordered with a sharp hand signal. 3 cadets who had positioned themselves in overhead maintenance crawl spaces opened fire from unexpected angles. The crossfire disoriented the invaders, who retreated around the corner, leaving their damaged companions behind. Silence fell over the junction. The senior cadets stared in astonishment at Chen's squad. "How?" began the avian cadet, his earlier contempt replaced with bewilderment. 3 months of drilling," Kravax answered before Chen could speak. The massive Zaxhar cadet checked his ammunition with practiced movements. Perhaps not so primitive after all. The instructor who had led the senior cadets approached Chen. "The entire Academy defense network is down. Most squadrons are scattered and disorganized without neural guidance. Then we'll need to coordinate a response using non-technological means," Chen replied. "My cadets can serve as unit leaders. They know how to function in these conditions." Word of the successful defense spread quickly through the compromised facility. Other instructors began sending their disoriented cadets to Chen for direction. The human tactics that had been mocked for months suddenly became the Academy's only hope for survival. Lieutenant Chen established a command center in the Academy's old archives, a rarely visited section where physical records were stored before the transition to quantum storage. Ancient star charts and tactical manuals lined the walls, their paper pages untouched by the disruption field affecting all electronic systems. The invaders maintain perfect formation despite our counterattacks, Chen explained to the gathered squad leaders. That suggests centralized control rather than individual tactical decision-making. She spread a hand-drawn map across the central table where Trilvor had sketched the Academy layout from memory. Red marks indicated confirmed invader positions, while blue circles showed their defensive strong points. They're establishing a perimeter around this section, Chen indicated, pointing to the Quantum Research Laboratory. They didn't come to destroy the Academy. They came for something specific. Kravax studied the pattern, his reptilian features sharpening with recognition. The experimental phase shift technology. The laboratory houses prototypes capable of allowing matter to move between dimensional states. Director Nixala nodded, her skin shifting to a pattern expressing grave concern. If weaponized, such technology could render planetary defense systems obsolete. Chen analyzed the invaders' movement patterns, mind racing through tactical possibilities. Her squad had conducted similar exercises dozens of times, but always as simulations. Now lives depended on her assessment. The invaders rely on technological superiority and expect us to do the same, she explained to the assembled group. Their advantage exists only if we fight on their terms. She outlined a strategy that made several instructors exchange doubtful glances. Instead of defending key positions or attempting to retake lost ground, Chen proposed an approach humans had used against superior forces throughout their bloody history: asymmetric warfare. We don't have the numbers or firepower for direct confrontation, she explained. Instead, we'll use hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, and psychological operations to disrupt their advance while we prepare our main counterattack. Trilvor, now leading his own squad of mixed-species cadets, leaned forward. What exactly does psychological warfare mean against biomechanical entities? Chen's expression hardened. We make them understand they're not fighting machines. They're fighting humans and their allies. The plan deployed rapidly. Small, mobile teams began targeting isolated invader units, striking quickly before disappearing into maintenance tunnels and ventilation shafts. The Academy's architecture, designed with aesthetic beauty rather than defensive considerations, suddenly became a maze of ambush points and hidden routes under Chen's guidance. Kravax led a team that specialized in physical barricades, using their natural strength to create bottlenecks that forced invaders into prepared kill zones. Valerians used their crystalline forms to redirect emergency lighting, temporarily blinding invader optical sensors at crucial moments. Most surprisingly effective were the Medusan cadets, who discovered their natural bioluminescence caused interference with the invaders' targeting systems when pulsed at specific frequencies, a capability that would have remained undiscovered if technology had been functioning normally. Chen moved between teams, adjusting tactics as they gathered more intelligence about the enemy. A captured invader provided valuable insights. The entities operated on a hive mind principle, with limited individual initiative when separated from the main force. They expected to fight an academy full of technologically dependent defenders. Chen told her officers during a brief strategy session. Instead, they're fighting an academy that has adapted to their attack parameters. Director Nixala found Chen mapping patrol routes using colored chalk on corridor walls. I witnessed your cadets ambush an invader patrol in the eastern quadrant, she said. They moved like they had been fighting this way their entire lives. Not their entire lives, Chen corrected. Just 3 months of daily drilling. The director's skin shifted to a pattern Chen had never seen before. The Academy's Defense Committee dismissed the possibility of technological failure. We never imagined fighting without our advantages. I was wrong about your methods, Lieutenant. Humans always imagine the worst, Chen replied, allowing herself a small smile. It's our greatest strength. A cadet appeared at the corridor junction, breathing heavily from exertion. Lieutenant, the invaders are changing formation. All units are converging on the laboratory. They're preparing for something big. Chen checked her mechanical chronometer. Time for Phase 2. Signal all teams to fall back to defensive positions around the lab. The real fight is about to begin. The Quantum Research Laboratory stood as a monument to Galactic Alliance innovation. A circular chamber ringed with research stations and dominated by the experimental phase shift apparatus at its center. Under normal circumstances, the laboratory would be protected by multiple layers of security fields and automated defense systems. Now it relied on barricades constructed from furniture and the determination of Chen's improvised defense force. They'll come from multiple vectors, Chen explained to the assembled squad leaders. The main force will approach through the primary corridor, while smaller units attempt infiltration through maintenance access points. Prevails surveyed their defensive positions with professional assessment. We've sealed the ventilation ducts and reinforced all secondary entrances. They'll be forced to funnel through these 3 approaches. He indicated the choke points on Trilvor's hand-drawn map. Chen nodded. Our advantage is knowledge of the terrain and preparation. Their advantage remains superior numbers and coordination. Intelligence gathered from observation and limited communications indicated the invaders had consolidated nearly all their forces for this final push. Whatever command intelligence guided them had calculated that a concentrated assault would overwhelm the defenders' limited resources. Director Nixola joined them for the final briefing, her skin pulsing with determination patterns. Confederation reinforcements have been signaled, but the disruption field is preventing confirmation of their response. We must hold this position independently. The defenders took their positions. Chen's core squad formed the center of the defense, while mixed teams of cadets who had received crash courses in human combat tactics secured the flanks. Chen moved among them, checking positions and offering quiet words of encouragement. She paused beside Trilvor, who was adjusting his makeshift ammunition pouches. The azure-skinned cadet looked up at her approach. I never understood the point of firing projectile weapons without targeting assistance, he admitted. It seemed primitive. Sometimes primitive endures when advanced fails, Chen replied. If we survive this, Trilvor said, I'll never mock human drills again. The first wave of attackers struck with overwhelming force. The main corridor erupted with weapons fire as dozens of invaders advanced in tight formation. Their carapaces gleamed darkly under emergency lighting, built-in weapons spitting energy bolts that sizzled against the barricades. The defenders responded with disciplined volleys, their projectile weapons punching through invader armor at crucial junction points Chen had identified during earlier engagements. The first line of attackers faltered, but others immediately filled the gaps, their movements suggesting shared consciousness rather than individual self-preservation. Secondary assault teams breached the maintenance entrances simultaneously, attempting to flank the defensive positions. Prevails led the counter-response, his team executing the room-clearing procedures they had drilled repeatedly over the past 3 months. For 20 minutes, the battle hung in perfect balance, the invaders' superior numbers matched by the defenders' preparation and position. Chen coordinated the defense from the central command point, reallocating resources as needed when sections came under particular pressure. Then the Invaders deployed their final asset, a massive construct combining multiple biomechanical entities into one formidable unit. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, its reinforced carapace shrugged off conventional ammunition. Energy weapons mounted on articulated limbs swept defensive positions with devastating effect. Fall back to secondary positions. Chen ordered as the construct breached their front line. Several cadets fell under its initial assault, their defensive fire barely slowing its advance. Director Nixola appeared at Chen's position. That construct is heading directly for the phase shift apparatus. If they secure that technology. They won't, Chen interrupted, studying the massive entity with focused intensity. Every significant threat had vulnerabilities, a principle she had drilled into her cadets since day one. The construct's movements, while powerful, followed predictable patterns. Each firing sequence was preceded by a specific realignment of its weapon systems. Between salvos, cooling vents along its dorsal surface briefly dilated, releasing excess heat from its power core. I need precision fire on its thermal vents during the cooling cycle, Chen told her squad. Standard ammunition won't penetrate, but we have one option. She retrieved a specialized round from her tactical vest, a high-explosive armor-piercing shell designed for emergency breaching operations. Earth's contribution to the Academy's armory, dismissed as unnecessarily destructive by Alliance standards. I'll need a clear shot during its next cooling cycle, Chen said. That means drawing its attention away from me. Trilvor immediately volunteered. My telepathic signature might register as a priority target if projected strongly enough. I can create the diversion. The plan unfolded with the precision of a well-drilled operation. Trilvor moved to an exposed position, his telepathic abilities concentrated into a focused broadcast that registered as a priority threat to the Invaders' shared consciousness. The massive construct immediately swiveled toward him, weapon systems charging for a devastating barrage. Kravax and 2 other cadets provided covering fire, their coordinated volleys striking non-critical areas of the construct, but drawing additional attention to Trilvor's position. The azure-skinned telepath maintained his composure despite the immediate danger, executing the diversion exactly as practiced in countless simulations. Lieutenant Chen circled behind a damaged research station, the specialized round loaded and ready. Her breathing slowed automatically. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, the calming technique she had taught her cadets for precision shooting. Ready, she subvocalized, knowing Trilvor would sense her preparation through his limited telepathic range. The construct fired a devastating salvo at Trilvor's position. The cadet dove for cover just as the energy blast obliterated the barricade behind him. The construct's massive form surged forward, systems momentarily overclocked by the powerful attack. Then came the critical moment. The thermal vents along its dorsal surface dilated, glowing with heat as the cooling cycle began. Chen took the shot. The specialized round struck the primary thermal vent precisely at its widest aperture. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the round detonated inside the construct's cooling system, triggering a catastrophic chain reaction that cascaded through its power distribution network. The construct froze mid-stride, internal systems failing sequentially as the damage spread. Secondary explosions rippled through its armored carapace. The command intelligence controlling the entity attempted to compensate, but the damage accelerated beyond its ability to contain. With a final mechanical shudder, the construct collapsed, its integrated weapon systems powering down permanently. The remaining invaders halted their advance. Without their primary assault unit, and the coordinating intelligence it contained, their hive-mind connection faltered. Confusion spread through their ranks as individual units suddenly found themselves operating without central direction. All teams advance, Chen ordered, capitalizing on the momentary advantage. The defenders surged forward with coordinated precision. Within minutes, the invaders began a disorganized retreat. Within an hour, they had abandoned the academy entirely, their remaining forces withdrawing to their vessels, which soon departed the system. As the disruption field faded, academy systems gradually reactivated. Emergency lighting brightened to standard illumination. Communication networks reconnected. Medical units deployed to treat the wounded. Chen found Director Nixala in the laboratory, examining the fallen construct with scientific curiosity. The Harvesters, the director explained, a cybernetic collective that raids advanced civilizations for technological innovations. We've had limited encounters with them before, but never an assault of this magnitude. They weren't expecting resistance once they neutralized your technology, Chen observed. No, Nixala agreed, her skin shifting to a pattern expressing profound realization. They weren't expecting humans. 3 weeks later, after the Academy had largely returned to normal operations, Chen stood at attention before the Galactic Alliance Defense Council. Her squad flanked her, their uniforms bearing nude commendation insignia for their role in repelling the invaders. Admiral Zondar, the Council's chairperson, addressed the assembled audience. The recent attack on our premier training facility has exposed a critical vulnerability in our defense doctrine. We have become overly dependent on technology that can be neutralized by a determined adversary. The Admiral gestured toward Chen and her cadets. Lieutenant Chen's training methods, initially viewed with skepticism, proved instrumental in the successful defense of the Academy. Therefore, the Council has unanimously approved the establishment of the Chen Protocol, a new training doctrine that combines our advanced technological warfare with fundamental combat skills that function without technological assistance. Thunderous applause filled the Council chamber. Chen maintained her professional demeanor, but allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. Later, during the formal reception, Trilvor approached Chen with an unexpected request. I've applied for a training rotation on Earth, he told her. I want to understand how humans became so adaptable. Necessity, she replied simply. We spent most of our history fighting each other with whatever we had available. We learned to prepare for failure because we experienced it so often. Across the reception hall, Chen spotted a new group of cadets listening to Kravax describe the battle. The massive Zaxhar demonstrated proper weapon handling techniques to an attentive audience. The first rule of combat, he was saying, is to assume your technology will fail at the worst possible moment. This is what the humans taught us. Director Nixala joined Chen, her skin displaying patterns of satisfaction and respect. Your methods are being implemented throughout the Academy curriculum, she informed Chen. Every cadet will now learn to function effectively with and without technological assistance. Chen nodded. The best technology in the universe is useless without the properly trained organic component to wield it. A very human perspective, Nixala observed, and one the Galactic Alliance would do well to embrace.